Few stories in history have shaped human thought as profoundly as the account of Adam, Eve, and the serpent in the Garden of Eden. From childhood, many of us were taught a simple version of the tale. A cunning snake deceived Eve, leading humanity into sin and exile. But what if there's more to this story? What if the serpent was not merely a deceiver, but a hidden teacher, a guardian of forbidden wisdom? The ancient Hebrew texts tell a story far richer and more mysterious than we've been led to believe. In this book, we will embark on a journey to uncover the serpent's true identity, hidden meaning, and profound implications for human consciousness. This is not just about religious history. This is about the nature of reality, knowledge, and even the secrets of manifestation. Why this topic matters: unraveling the hidden truth. Throughout history, knowledge has often been suppressed. Mystics, scholars, and seekers have asked, was the serpent in Genesis truly a villain, or was it offering humanity a gift? The power of awareness, enlightenment, and self-determination? The greatest enemy of knowledge is not ignorance, it is the illusion of knowledge. Stephen Hawking. If the traditional interpretation is flawed, then we must ask ourselves, what is the real message hidden in the original Hebrew text? Why would an all-knowing God place the tree of knowledge in the garden and then forbid Adam and Eve from eating its fruit? And why does the serpent's role resemble figures in other ancient traditions who offer wisdom, transformation, and awakening? To uncover these answers, we must go beyond surface-level interpretations and dive into the deeper, often hidden meanings of the Hebrew words used in the Genesis account. The Hebrew language as a key to unlocking the mystery. Words are spells. That's why they call it spelling. Language shapes our reality. And yet, most people read the Bible in translation, unaware of how much meaning has been lost, altered, or misinterpreted. The Hebrew word for serpent, nachash, is not merely a reference to a snake. It carries multiple layers of meaning, including enchantment, shining one, and divination. Could it be that the serpent in Eden was not a mere reptile but something far more profound? Biblical Hebrew is a code, a language of deep symbolic meanings. When we decode it, a new perspective emerges, one that challenges long-held beliefs and reveals a powerful truth about the origins of human consciousness. What you will discover in this book. There are things known and there are things unknown, and in between are the doors of perception. Aldous Huxley. In this book, we will explore 1. The true meaning of the serpent in Genesis. Was it a deceiver or an illuminator? 2. The hidden power of the Hebrew word nachash, and how it connects to ancient wisdom traditions. 3. What the fruit of the tree of knowledge really was, and why it may have been more than just food. 4. The connection between the serpent and esoteric knowledge found in Kabbalah, Gnosticism, and ancient mystery schools. 5. How this ancient story mirrors other myths worldwide, from the Sumerians to Eastern spiritual traditions. 6. The suppressed knowledge of the serpent and what it means for us today. Could we be living in a world where hidden truths are still being kept from us? This is more than just an exploration of Genesis. It's an invitation to see reality differently. If you have ever felt that there is something more to this life than what we've been told, then you are ready for this journey. When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Buddhist Proverb 1. Let us begin. Chapter 1. The Common Interpretation and its Flaws. The Traditional Christian and Jewish Views of the Serpent. History is written by the victors. Winston Churchill. For centuries, the serpent in Genesis has been cast as the ultimate villain, the deceiver who led humanity into sin, suffering, and separation from God. Traditional Christian doctrine has largely portrayed the serpent as Satan in disguise, a cunning enemy who tricked Eve into eating the forbidden fruit. This interpretation is deeply embedded in Western thought, influencing everything from theology to literature and even art. Judaism, on the other hand, does not universally equate the serpent with Satan. Some rabbinic scholars suggest that the serpent represents human desire, the Yetzer Hara, inclination toward evil, or even a metaphor for free will. Others see it as an independent force, separate from the devil figure that later Christian doctrine developed. But what if both perspectives have missed something? What if the serpent was not merely a deceiver, but a messenger of knowledge, an initiator, or even a misunderstood guide? The story of the fall. What most people believe. Every act of perception is to some degree an act of creation, and every act of memory is to some degree an act of imagination. Gerald M. Edelman. Ask the average person about the Garden of Eden, and you'll likely hear a simplified version of the story. 1. God creates Adam and Eve and places them in paradise. 2. He gives them one rule: do not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. 3. A talking serpent appears and tempts Eve, telling her that eating the fruit will make her wise like God. 4. Eve eats the fruit, gives some to Adam, and suddenly they realize they are naked and feel shame. 5. God discovers their disobedience, curses them, and banishes them from Eden, preventing them from accessing the tree of life. This narrative has been used for centuries to justify doctrines of original sin, the need for salvation, and humanity's separation from the divine. But there's a problem. This version is based on centuries of mistranslation, theological bias, and cultural storytelling, rather than the original Hebrew text. How translations have shaped perception. The biggest problem with communication is the illusion that it has taken place. George Bernard Shaw. One of the most overlooked yet critical aspects of biblical interpretation is the issue of translation. The Bible has been translated countless times, first from Hebrew to Greek, the Septuagint, then into Latin, the Vulgate, and later into English and countless other languages. With each translation, nuance, cultural context, and hidden meanings were lost, distorted, or redefined. Take, for example, the Hebrew word for serpent, nachash. In Hebrew, nachash doesn't just mean snake. It also carries meanings like 1. Shining one, implying something radiant, divine, or even angelic. 2. Enchanter, or one who practices divination. 3. A symbol of wisdom and knowledge. Thus, when we re-examine Genesis in its original language, we begin to see something shocking. The serpent may not have been a mere deceiver at all, but a being associated with knowledge, enlightenment, and transformation. The hidden clues that most have overlooked. The world is full of obvious things which nobody by any chance ever observes. Author Conan Doyle. There are glaring clues in the Genesis narrative that suggest we've been looking at the story incorrectly. Here are just a few. 1. The serpent didn't lie. One of the most surprising revelations is that the serpent's words were not false. The serpent told Eve, "For God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." Genesis 3 verse 5, NIV. And what happened after Eve and Adam ate? Then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they realized they were naked. Genesis 3 verse 7. God himself later confirms this when he says, "Behold, the man has become like one of us, knowing good and evil." Genesis 3 verse 22. In other words, the serpent was telling the truth. Eating the fruit did grant them divine knowledge. So why is the serpent universally condemned? 2. The tree was called the tree of knowledge. A mind once stretched by a new idea never returns to its original dimensions. Ralph Waldo Emerson. If knowledge was so dangerous, why did God place the tree of knowledge in the garden in the first place? And why forbid eating from it? Was the sin in seeking knowledge Or was it in disobeying divine command? Some interpretations suggest that humanity was never meant to remain ignorant, but that knowledge must come through a journey, not through a single act. In this view, the serpent accelerated human evolution, making Adam and Eve aware of themselves as conscious beings. 3. The expulsion from Eden, punishment or transformation. Every exit is an entry somewhere else. Tom Stoppard. Many see Adam and Eve's expulsion as a punishment, but what if it was actually a necessary step in human development? Some ancient interpretations, including certain mystical Jewish and Gnostic traditions, suggest that leaving Eden was not a fall but an ascent, a graduation into higher awareness and free will. In Kabbalistic thought, Eden represents a state of unconscious unity, where humanity existed in bliss but without self-awareness. Eating from the tree of knowledge brought the ability to think, choose, and create one's destiny, even if it came with suffering. Final thoughts. What if we've been wrong all along? The real voyage of discovery consists not in seeking new landscapes, but in having new eyes. Marcel Proust. What if the serpent was not the villain of the story, but its most misunderstood character? What if the true sin of Adam and Eve was not disobedience, but the fear of knowledge itself? As we continue through this book, we will deconstruct the traditional narrative, explore hidden meanings in the Hebrew text, and uncover what ancient wisdom traditions have to say about this story. 1. Prepare to see the Genesis serpent in an entirely new light. Chapter 2. Decoding the Hebrew, the hidden meanings. The beginning of wisdom is to call things by their proper names. Confucius. For centuries, the serpent in Genesis has been cast as a sinister figure, the great deceiver, and the architect of humanity's fall. But what if this interpretation is based on a fundamental misunderstanding of the Hebrew text? In this chapter, we will dive deep into the original Hebrew language, exploring the true meaning of the word serpent, nechash, its hidden numerical significance in gematria, and how this figure connects to other mysterious biblical beings. Prepare to unlearn what you've been taught, because what the Hebrew text reveals may shock you. The Hebrew word for serpent, nechash, and its multiple meanings. The limits of my language mean the limits of my world. Ludwig Wittgenstein. Most people assume that the word serpent in Genesis 3 simply refers to a snake, but this is only one layer of meaning. In Hebrew, the word used for serpent is nachash, and it has multiple definitions beyond just a reptilian creature. 1. Serpent, literal, a physical snake, which is the standard translation. 2. Shining one, etymological. The root of nachash is linked to brightness, suggesting a radiant or supernatural being. 3. Diviner or enchanter. In biblical Hebrew, nachash can mean to practice divination or to reveal hidden knowledge. So, the serpent in Eden was not necessarily just a talking snake. It could have been a luminescent being, a divine messenger, or even a figure of wisdom and esoteric knowledge. This completely changes the way we interpret Genesis. Instead of a deceptive snake, was the nachash actually offering Eve enlightenment? The serpent as a literal creature versus a symbolic entity. Symbols are the language of the soul. Carl Jung. The Bible is filled with symbolic imagery, and many scholars argue that the serpent in Genesis was never meant to be taken literally. Instead, it represents a force of transformation, knowledge, and self-awareness. Consider these symbolic interpretations. 1. In ancient Mesopotamian texts, serpents were often symbols of divine wisdom. 2. In Egyptian mythology, the serpent was a protector of sacred knowledge. 3. In Hinduism, Kundalini energy, represented as a coiled serpent, symbolizes spiritual awakening. Could it be that Genesis borrowed from these ancient traditions, portraying the serpent not as a deceiver, but as a guide toward hidden wisdom? This would explain why the serpent's words were not actually lies. As we saw in chapter 1, God himself later confirmed that Adam and Eve had indeed gained knowledge. So, was the serpent in Eden a villain or an initiator? The role of gematria, numerical values, in understanding the serpent. Mathematics is the language with which God has written the universe. Galileo Galilei. Hebrew is a unique language because every letter corresponds to a numerical value, a practice known as gematria. This allows hidden meanings to be uncovered through numbers. Let's look at the numerical significance of Nachash. 1. Nun equals 50. 2. Chet equals 8. 3. Shin equals 300. 4. Total equals 358. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The number 358 also corresponds to the Hebrew word Mashiach, meaning Messiah. This suggests that the serpent and the Messiah are numerically linked, a shocking idea for those who see the serpent as purely evil. Could this imply that the serpent was bringing a form of divine transformation to humanity rather than simply causing destruction? In Kabbalistic thought, evil and enlightenment are often two sides of the same coin. In order for humanity to grow, it had to leave the state of innocence and enter the world of self-awareness. Could this mean that the serpent was not an enemy, but a necessary force for human evolution? Connections to other mysterious biblical figures. The only way to deal with this life meaningfully is to find patterns. Jordan Peterson. The serpent of Genesis is not an isolated figure. Similar enigmatic beings appear throughout the Bible, and they often share striking similarities with the Nachash. 1. The serpent of Moses, Numbers 21:8-9. In the book of Numbers, when the Israelites are plagued by venomous serpents, God tells Moses to make a bronze serpent, Nachash Nekashet, and lift it on a pole, and anyone who looks at it is healed. Why would God use the image of a serpent as a symbol of healing? Could this be another clue that the serpent is not inherently evil, but rather a source of divine knowledge and transformation? The cherubim and the fiery serpent, seraphim, Isaiah 6 verses 2-6. Another connection comes from the seraphim, angelic beings described as having a fiery, serpent-like appearance. The word seraph is related to burning or radiance, similar to how Nachash can mean shining one. In Isaiah's vision, a seraphim touches his lips with a burning coal, granting him divine wisdom. This parallels the Genesis serpent's role as an initiator of knowledge. 3. The wisdom of the Gnostics and Kabbalists. Ancient Gnostic texts present a radically different version of Genesis, where the serpent is not the enemy but the liberator. According to the Gnostic Gospel of Philip, the serpent helps humanity break free from an oppressive God, a concept that mirrors the idea that knowledge, once obtained, cannot be taken away. Kabbalistic thought also sees the story of Eden as an allegory for spiritual awakening. The tree of knowledge represents hidden wisdom, and the serpent is the one who brings it to humanity. Final thoughts, a story of awakening, not just disobedience. The truth is rarely pure and never simple. Oscar Wilde. What if the story of the serpent is not about a fall into sin, but rather a rise into consciousness? What if the Nachash was not a deceiver, but a guide, an initiator, and a necessary force for human enlightenment? As we continue this journey, we will explore even deeper layers of hidden truth in Genesis, and what they mean for our understanding of God, free will, and the nature of reality. 1. Are you ready to see what's been hidden in plain sight? Chapter 3. The serpent as an enlightener, not a deceiver? The truth will set you free, but first it will make you uncomfortable. Gloria Steinem. For thousands of years, the story of the serpent in Genesis has been framed as a tale of deception, a cunning trickster leading humanity into sin, corruption, and exile. But what if this interpretation is completely backward? What if, instead of being a liar and a tempter, the serpent was actually an enlightener, a being who bestowed hidden wisdom upon humanity, opening their eyes to deeper truths? This chapter will challenge conventional interpretations and unveil the shocking possibility that the serpent was not humanity's enemy, but rather its first teacher. Was the serpent a liar, or did it reveal hidden knowledge? The most dangerous enemy of truth and freedom among us is the compact majority. Henrik Ibsen. Let's examine what the serpent actually said to Eve and compare it to what happened. Genesis 3 verses 4 to 5, KJV. And the serpent said unto the woman, Ye shall not surely die. For God doth know that in the day ye eat thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. At first glance, this statement seems deceitful. God had warned Adam and Eve that eating from the tree would result in death. But did they die? 1. Genesis 5 verse 5 tells us that Adam lived to be 930 years old. 2. Instead of immediate death, Adam and Eve gained knowledge, the very thing the serpent promised. 3. Genesis 3 verse 22 confirms that God himself acknowledged their newfound awareness. 4. Behold, the man is become as one of us to know good and evil. So, who was actually telling the truth? If the serpent was lying, why did everything it said come true? This forces us to reconsider. Was the serpent truly a deceiver, or was it simply revealing a truth that had been hidden? And if God knew that humanity would eventually need knowledge, why did he try to withhold it? The connection between the serpent and wisdom traditions. Knowledge makes a man unfit to be a slave. Frederick Douglass. Across multiple cultures, the serpent has been associated with wisdom, transformation, and enlightenment rather than evil. In fact, the very act of shedding its skin makes the serpent a universal symbol of rebirth, renewal, and higher consciousness. Consider these ancient wisdom traditions. 1. The serpent in Hinduism, Kundalini awakening. In Hindu tradition, Kundalini energy is depicted as a coiled serpent at the base of the spine. When awakened, this serpent rises, activating higher states of consciousness. 1. Is it a coincidence that Genesis describes the serpent as the one who opened the eyes of Adam and Eve? 2. Was the serpent in Eden performing a role similar to that of Kundalini, awakening humanity to a higher state of being? The serpent in Greek and Roman mythology, the healer and teacher. 1. Asclepius, the Greek god of medicine, is symbolized by a serpent-entwined staff, a symbol still used in modern medicine. 2. Hermes, the messenger god, carries the caduceus, another serpent staff, representing wisdom and divine communication. 3. The serpent in ancient Egypt, a guardian of hidden knowledge. 1. The uraeus, a rearing cobra worn on the crowns of Egyptian pharaohs, symbolized divine protection and wisdom. 2. The Ouroboros, the ancient symbol of a snake eating its own tail, represents infinity, cycles of life, and eternal wisdom. Why do so many cultures associate the serpent with wisdom rather than deception? Could it be that the traditional Christian view of Genesis has misrepresented the serpent's true role? Parallels to other ancient myths, Sumerian, Egyptian, Gnostic. History is written by the victors. Winston Churchill. Genesis is not the only ancient text that tells a story about humanity gaining forbidden wisdom. Other cultures have eerily similar myths, many of which paint the serpent figure as a hero rather than a villain. 1. The Sumerian story of Enki and Ninhursag. 1. In Sumerian mythology, the god Enki, a bringer of knowledge, tricks the higher gods in order to give wisdom to humanity. 2. Like the serpent in Genesis, Enki defies divine authority to help humans evolve. 3. Enki is often associated with the serpent and water, two symbols of wisdom and transformation. 2. The Gnostic interpretation of the serpent, the liberator. 1. In some Gnostic texts, the serpent is actually a savior figure who helps humanity escape the control of an oppressive false god, the demiurge. 2. The Gospel of Philip even suggests that the true enemy in Genesis was not the serpent, but the god who tried to suppress human knowledge. Could this mean that the serpent in Genesis was actually trying to liberate Adam and Eve from ignorance, rather than doom them? Why was Eve so easily persuaded? A mind stretched by new ideas never returns to its original dimensions. Oliver Wendell Holmes. Many religious traditions depict Eve as easily deceived, but let's reconsider. 1. Eve was not naive, she was curious. 2. She was not weak, she was open to understanding. 3. She was not tricked, she was convinced. If the serpent was truly an evil deceiver, wouldn't Eve have sensed something sinister? Instead, she found its words compelling. Why? 1. The tree was already desirable. Genesis 3 verse 6 tells us, "When the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree to be desired to make one wise, she took of the fruit thereof." The text never says the serpent made the tree desirable. It already was. Eve simply recognized its potential. 2. Wisdom has always been feared by those in power. Throughout history, those in authority have often tried to suppress knowledge. 1. The Catholic Church once banned the translation of the Bible into local languages. 2. Galileo was condemned for proving that the earth revolves around the sun. 3. Governments and elites have repeatedly sought to control information. Could it be that Eve wasn't tricked, but rather took a courageous step toward enlightenment? Final thoughts, a story of liberation, not rebellion. The only real prison is ignorance, and the only real freedom is knowledge. Buddha. If we strip away centuries of dogma and look at the text with fresh eyes, a startling revelation emerges. 1. The serpent may not have been an enemy, but a guide. 2. The fruit may not have been a curse, but an awakening. 3. The fall may not have been a disaster, but the beginning of human self-awareness. If we consider that knowledge is a gift, not a sin, then Genesis becomes a story of humanity stepping into its power, not being cast into ruin. 1. As we move forward, we will continue to unravel more mysteries. Chapter 4. The True Identity of the Serpent. The world is full of obvious things which nobody by any chance ever observes. Author Conan Doyle. For centuries, the serpent in Genesis has been cast as a cunning deceiver, a villain responsible for the downfall of humankind. But as we peel back the layers of ancient language, symbolism, and cross-cultural myths, a different picture begins to emerge. What if the serpent wasn't a mere snake, but something far more powerful? Could it have been a divine or angelic being, one with a role in the grand cosmic drama of enlightenment? This chapter explores the true identity of the serpent by analyzing Hebrew linguistics, biblical symbology, and hidden esoteric traditions that may shock you and forever change the way you see this ancient story. Could the serpent represent an angelic or divine being? Angels are not merely messengers, but forces of transformation. Rumi. In modern interpretations, the serpent is often imagined as a mere snake, slithering on the ground and whispering temptation. But this view is based largely on later Christian tradition, rather than the original Hebrew text. In Genesis 3, the Hebrew word for serpent is nachash. But this word is not limited to the meaning of a physical snake. In ancient Hebrew, nachash can also mean 1. A diviner or enchanter, suggesting supernatural wisdom. 2. A shining one, related to divine beings. 3. A serpent-like creature, but potentially symbolic. These alternative meanings suggest the serpent in Eden may not have been a mere reptile, but rather a celestial entity, perhaps even an angelic being. This leads us to a fascinating question. Was the Nachash a fallen angel? A divine messenger? A being from the Elohim? The serpent as a divine messenger? Throughout the Bible, God frequently sends messengers, angels, who challenge, test, and reveal hidden truths to humanity. Could the serpent have played a similar role? 1. In Job 1 verse 6, the sons of God, Bene Elohim, appear before God, and among them is the Satan, a title meaning the adversary rather than a specific name. 2. In Numbers 22:28, God makes a donkey speak, so why not allow a celestial being to speak through a serpent? 3. In Genesis 32 verses 24 to 30, Jacob wrestles with a mysterious divine figure all night, only to realize he has seen God face to face. If divine beings frequently appear in cryptic and challenging roles, could it be that the serpent in Eden was not acting in rebellion, but as a catalyst for human awakening? The overlaps between Nachash, the Shining One, and the Seraphim. Not all who wander are lost. J.R.R. Tolkien. The Hebrew word Nachash shares a fascinating linguistic connection with another powerful biblical term, seraphim, seraphim. Who are the seraphim? The seraphim are the highest order of angels in biblical tradition. They are described in Isaiah 6 verse 2 as fiery, serpent-like beings who stand before God's throne. 1. The word seraphim comes from the root saraph, meaning to burn or to shine, a striking similarity to one of the meanings of Nachash. 2. In Numbers 21:6-9, God sends fiery serpents, seraphim, to punish Israel, and Moses is told to craft a bronze serpent, Nachash, on a pole to heal those who look upon it. The imagery is stunning. 1. Seraphim are depicted as both fiery and serpentine. 2. Nachash means both serpent and shining one. 3. Both figures are linked to divine knowledge and transformation. Could the serpent in Genesis actually have been a seraphim, one of the fiery, divine beings in God's own court? If so, then the serpent was not an enemy of God, but a figure sent to bestow knowledge upon humanity. This directly contradicts the idea that the serpent was a mere deceiver and suggests it may have played a divinely sanctioned role in the unfolding story of humanity. The Gnostic view, the serpent as a liberator. The greatest enemy of knowledge is not ignorance, it is the illusion of knowledge. Stephen Hawking. In many Gnostic texts, ancient Christian and Jewish writings that offer alternative spiritual interpretations, the serpent is not a villain but a liberator. The Gnostic hypothesis. 1. The Gospel of Philip suggests that the Creator God in Genesis was a false god, the demiurge, who sought to keep humanity ignorant. 2. The serpent, in contrast, was a divine being who revealed the truth, awakening humanity from spiritual blindness. 3. Instead of a fall, the eating of the fruit represents humanity's first step towards self-awareness and divine wisdom. This interpretation completely reverses the traditional narrative. 1. The true oppressor is the one who withholds knowledge. 2. The true liberator is the one who reveals it. This aligns with our previous analysis. If the Nachash was an angelic, shining one, rather than a mere snake, then its role was likely more complex than simply being a deceiver. The role of the Elohim in the Genesis narrative. The secret of change is to focus all of your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new. Socrates. One of the most overlooked yet mind-blowing details in Genesis is the reference to the Elohim, the plural Hebrew term for God or gods. 1. Genesis 1 verse 26. Let us make man in our image, after our likeness. 2. Genesis 3 verse 22. Behold, The man has become like one of us, knowing good and evil. Who is God talking to? Himself, angels, other divine beings? The plural nature of Elohim raises questions. 1. Was Eden overseen by multiple divine entities? 2. Could the serpent have been part of this divine assembly, playing a role in humanity's evolution? 3. Was the serpent acting alone, or was it part of a larger cosmic drama? This changes everything. Genesis may not be a simple battle between good and evil, but a complex story of divine beings, hidden knowledge, and humanity's journey toward enlightenment. Final thoughts. The serpent as humanity's first teacher. The function of wisdom is to discriminate between good and evil. Cicero. The traditional interpretation of Genesis presents a black and white narrative. 1. God equals good. 2. Serpent equals evil. 3. Humanity equals fallen. But the deeper truth is far more nuanced. If the serpent was a divine being, a shining one, or even a seraphim, then its actions in Eden were not an act of malice but of revelation. It may have been humanity's first teacher, guiding us toward 1. Knowledge over ignorance. 2. Freedom over blind obedience. 3. Awakening over stagnation. 4. As we move forward, we will explore an even greater mystery. Who, or what, was God protecting when he blocked access to the tree of life? Chapter 5. The forbidden fruit. What was it really? The possession of knowledge does not kill the sense of wonder and mystery. There is always more mystery. Anais Nin. For centuries, the image of an apple in the hands of Eve has dominated Western art and storytelling. From Renaissance paintings to modern films, the forbidden fruit has been cemented in our collective imagination. But here's the shocking truth. Nowhere in the Bible does it say the fruit was an apple. What if the forbidden fruit was something entirely different? What if it wasn't even a fruit at all? In this chapter, we will uncover the true identity of the forbidden fruit, exploring its deeper symbolism and the hidden meaning within the Hebrew text. What we find may challenge everything you thought you knew about the Garden of Eden, knowledge, and the origins of human consciousness. Was it an apple, a fig, or something else? The greatest enemy of knowledge is not ignorance, it is the illusion of knowledge. Stephen Hawking. The idea that Eve ate an apple comes not from the Hebrew Bible, but from later Western translations, particularly the Latin Vulgate. In Latin, the word for apple, malum, is nearly identical to the word for evil, malus. This linguistic coincidence may have influenced medieval scholars to associate the forbidden fruit with an apple. But what does the Hebrew text actually say? 1. The original Hebrew simply refers to it as the fruit, peri, a general term that does not specify any particular plant. 2. Jewish tradition often associates the fruit with a fig, since Adam and Eve immediately covered themselves with fig leaves. Genesis 3 verse 7. 3. Some early Christian texts suggest it may have been a grape or pomegranate, both of which carry deep symbolic meaning in biblical literature. 4. The Talmud even speculates that the fruit was wheat, symbolizing a leap in human intelligence rather than a literal act of eating. Could it be that the forbidden fruit was never meant to be taken literally at all? The fruit as a metaphor for knowledge, deat. All knowledge hurts. Cassandra Clare. The forbidden fruit is directly linked to knowledge, specifically, the knowledge of good and evil. But what does this mean? The Hebrew word for knowledge is deat, which is far deeper than simply knowing something intellectually. In Hebrew thought, deat represents experiential knowledge, insight, and even intimate understanding. 1. In Proverbs 2 verse 6, "For the Lord gives wisdom, from his mouth come knowledge, deat, and understanding." 2. In Hosea 4 verse 6, My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge, Deat. If knowledge itself was forbidden, what kind of God would want to keep humanity in ignorance? Perhaps the true lesson of Genesis isn't about a physical fruit, but about the awakening of human consciousness. Could it be that the moment Eve ate, she didn't simply disobey, she became self-aware? This perspective leads us into the esoteric wisdom of Kabbalah, which sees Genesis as a story of spiritual evolution, not simply a tale of sin. The connection to the tree of life and Kabbalistic thought. The day you stop learning is the day you stop living. Albert Einstein. Genesis speaks of two trees in the garden. 1. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil. 2. The tree of life. Why were there two trees? Kabbalistic tradition teaches that these trees represent two spiritual paths. 1. The tree of knowledge equals duality, self-awareness, and choice. 2. The tree of life equals immortality, unity, and divine wisdom. After eating the fruit of knowledge, Adam and Eve were barred from the tree of life. Genesis 3 verse 22. But why? 1. Was God afraid that humans would become like gods themselves? 2. Did the fruit expand their consciousness, making them capable of divine understanding? 3. Was Eden never about obedience but about the evolution of the soul? In Kabbalistic thought, the sin of Adam and Eve was not eating the fruit itself but consuming it prematurely, before they were spiritually ready. Humanity was meant to ascend through wisdom, but instead, we were cast into a world of struggle to earn our way back. If this is true, then Genesis is not a tragedy, but a blueprint for spiritual awakening. The sexual allegory theory. Was it about more than just a fruit? There are things known and there are things unknown, and in between are the doors of perception. Aldous Huxley. One of the most controversial interpretations of the forbidden fruit is that it wasn't about eating at all, but about sexual awakening. Symbolism of fruit in ancient cultures. 1. In many ancient traditions, fruit is a symbol of fertility and creation. 2. The Song of Solomon, a highly sensual biblical text, frequently describes love and intimacy in the language of fruit. 1. I sat down under his shadow with great delight, and his fruit was sweet to my taste. Song of Solomon 2 verse 3. 3. The word for knowledge, deat, is also used in the Bible to describe sexual relations. 1. Genesis 4 verse 1. And Adam knew Yada, Eve his wife, and she conceived. Did Adam and Eve know each other in a new way? 1. Some scholars argue that the fruit represents the awakening of human sexuality and self-awareness. 2. The first thing Adam and Eve did after eating the fruit was cover themselves, a clear sign of newfound modesty or shame. 3. Certain Gnostic texts suggest that the serpent was actually a symbol of divine union, rather than temptation. Could it be that the fall was really about humans discovering their own power, the power to create, to choose, and to experience love on a deeper level? Final thoughts. What was the forbidden fruit, really? Wisdom begins in wonder. Socrates. The story of the forbidden fruit is one of the most mysterious and misunderstood narratives in human history. It may not have been an apple, or even a literal fruit. Instead, it could have represented 1. The expansion of human consciousness. 2. The awakening of knowledge, deat. 3. The loss of innocence and the beginning of self-awareness. 4. A sexual or spiritual initiation. What we do know is that the fruit forever changed the course of human history. It marked the moment when humanity stepped into free will, into choice, and into the unknown. Perhaps the greatest mystery isn't what the fruit was, but why God placed it in the garden in the first place. 1. Was it a test? A trap? or an invitation to something greater? Chapter 6. What really happened in the garden? The truth will set you free, but first it will make you miserable. James A. Garfield. The story of Adam and Eve is one of the most famous narratives in human history, yet also one of the most misunderstood. It has been told for generations as a cautionary tale of disobedience and divine punishment. But what if we have been reading it all wrong? What if the Garden of Eden was not a paradise lost, but a classroom completed? What if the serpent was not a deceiver, but a liberator? And what if God's response was not a punishment, but a reaction to something far greater than simple defiance? In this chapter, we will re-examine Eden with fresh eyes, diving deep into the hidden meanings of Genesis, the true significance of Adam and Eve's expulsion, and the shocking connections to ancient Sumerian myths. Was Adam and Eve's expulsion a punishment or a graduation? A mind that is stretched by a new experience can never go back to its old dimensions. Oliver Wendell Holmes. The traditional interpretation of Genesis 3 suggests that Adam and Eve were expelled from Eden as a punishment for their disobedience. They ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and as a result, God cursed them and cast them out. But if we step back and re-examine the text, a very different picture emerges. 1. What was the sin that led to their exile? 1. Eating from the tree of knowledge wasn't a crime of evil, but one of awareness. 2. The moment they ate, they became self-aware. They knew they were naked, they understood good and evil, and they saw the world differently. 2. Was their removal from Eden a punishment or a necessary next step? 1. Many ancient wisdom traditions see knowledge as a gateway to growth. 2. If Eden was a place of innocence, then leaving was an initiation into true existence. 3. In Kabbalah, some teachings suggest that Adam and Eve weren't meant to stay in the garden forever, but to evolve and become co-creators of their destiny. 3. Did humanity fall, or did it rise? 1. Before eating the fruit, Adam and Eve were like children, innocent but limited. 2. After eating, they became adults, capable of free will and self-determination. This shift from innocence to awareness mirrors the universal journey of human growth. We all leave behind the safety of childhood to step into the complexities of life. Could it be that humanity's so-called fall was actually its first step toward enlightenment? Did humanity gain free will through the serpent's influence? You can choose to be a slave, or you can choose to be free. The choice is yours. Unknown. One of the most overlooked aspects of the Garden of Eden story is what it reveals about human free will. Before the serpent entered the picture, Adam and Eve didn't question anything. They simply existed, obeying divine instructions without thought or doubt. But the serpent introduced a choice. 1. Did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden? Genesis 3 verse 1. This single question sparked independent thought. Eve had to evaluate, analyze, and decide for herself. By eating the fruit, she and Adam made the first truly human decision, one based not on blind obedience, but on the power to choose their own destiny. The serpent's role here is deeply symbolic. In many traditions, the serpent represents transformation, wisdom, and change. 1. In Hinduism, Kundalini energy is depicted as a coiled serpent representing spiritual awakening. 2. In ancient Egypt, the serpent was a symbol of knowledge and divine power. 3. In Gnostic Christianity, the serpent is not the villain, but the bringer of enlightenment. If knowledge is power, then was the serpent giving Adam and Eve their first taste of true human freedom? The role of Yahweh, why was he so concerned? Knowledge makes a man unfit to be a slave. Frederick Douglass. After Adam and Eve eat the fruit, God's reaction is revealing. 1. Behold, the man has become like one of us, knowing good and evil. Genesis 3 verse 22. 1. This is a staggering admission. 2. The divine beings, Elohim, acknowledge that humanity has changed. It has ascended in knowledge. 2. Lest he also reach out his hand and take from the tree of life, and eat, and live forever. Genesis 3 verse 22. 1. The concern here isn't just about knowledge, but about immortality. 2. If humanity learned too much, too quickly, it might become like the gods themselves. This suggests that the Garden of Eden wasn't just about obedience, it was about power. The concern wasn't just that Adam and Eve ate the fruit, but that they might become too much like the divine. This raises profound questions. 1. Was God trying to prevent humans from becoming equal to the divine? 2. Was the expulsion an act of control or an act of mercy? 3. Was the true danger not knowledge itself, but knowledge without wisdom? By sending Adam and Eve out, Yahweh may have been delaying their ascension, forcing them to mature before they could wield divine power. The link between the Garden of Eden and Sumerian creation myths. History is written by those who have hanged heroes. Braveheart. The Genesis story didn't emerge in a vacuum. It shares striking similarities with older Mesopotamian myths, particularly those from ancient Sumer. The Sumerians, one of the earliest civilizations, had a creation myth involving 1. A garden paradise. 2. A divine being who gave humans knowledge. 3. A god who tried to limit humanity's potential. The myth of Enki and Adapa. 1. In Sumerian mythology, the god Enki, a wise and rebellious deity, created the first human, Adapa. 2. Adapa was given knowledge, but was denied the gift of immortality. 3. Just like Adam and Eve, he was kept from living forever. This echoes the Genesis story almost exactly. Was the Garden of Eden just a retelling of an older myth, altered to fit the Hebrew worldview? If so, what does that mean for the true origins of our biblical traditions? Final thoughts. What was the garden, really? The real voyage of discovery consists not in seeking new landscapes, but in having new eyes. Marcel Proust. The Garden of Eden may not have been a paradise lost, but a gateway to human evolution. It was the place where 1. Humanity took its first steps toward free will. 2. Knowledge became both a gift and a burden. 3. The divine mystery deepened rather than became clear. If Adam and Eve had never eaten the fruit, would we have ever become truly human? 1. Perhaps the greatest secret of Eden isn't that we fell, but that we rose. Chapter 7. The Serpent and the Messianic Prophecy. The oldest and strongest emotion of mankind is fear, and the oldest and strongest kind of fear is fear of the unknown. H.P. Lovecraft. Since the dawn of civilization, the struggle between good and evil has been at the heart of human storytelling. The Bible, one of the most influential texts in human history, frames this battle in a cosmic war, one that began in Eden and unfolds throughout the pages of Scripture. But what if the serpent's role is deeper than we have been led to believe? What if the prophecy in Genesis 3 verse 15 isn't just about a curse, but a blueprint for the ultimate redemption? What if the serpent was not just an enemy to be crushed, but a key player in the divine plan? This chapter will uncover the hidden meanings of Genesis 3 verse 15, the battle between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent, and how this prophecy echoes throughout the Bible, from Moses to Jesus to the apocalyptic visions of Revelation. The first prophecy of the Messiah. Genesis 3 verse 15 revisited. And I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. Genesis 3 verse 15. This verse is often called the proto-evangelium, or the first gospel, because it is seen as the first prophecy of the coming Messiah. 1. Who are the seeds in this prophecy? 1. The seed of the woman has traditionally been interpreted as a reference to Jesus Christ, the one who would ultimately defeat the works of the serpent, Satan. 2. The seed of the serpent is often seen as representing Satan's forces, his influence, his followers, and ultimately, the forces of darkness that oppose God's plan. 2. What does it mean to bruise the head versus bruise the heel? 1. A head wound is fatal, a sign of complete victory over an enemy. 2. A heel wound, while painful, is temporary, a sign of struggle, but not destruction. 3. This is often interpreted as a prophecy that the Messiah would be wounded, the crucifixion, but ultimately he would crush the power of the enemy, the resurrection and final judgment. But what if there's more to this story than we've been told? The war between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent. The battle line between good and evil runs through the heart of every man. Alexander Solzhenitsyn. Genesis 3 verse 15 sets up a cosmic war that unfolds throughout the Bible, a war between two seeds or lineages. But what exactly does that mean? Two bloodlines? A shocking interpretation. Some esoteric traditions and even early Christian writings suggest that the seed of the serpent could refer to a literal bloodline. 1. Certain Gnostic texts, like the Gospel of Philip, claim that Cain was the offspring of the serpent, not Adam. 2. This controversial theory suggests that there are two competing lineages in the world, one from God, one from the serpent. While this interpretation isn't mainstream, it raises an intriguing possibility that the battle between the forces of good and evil might be encoded into humanity itself. Even if not taken literally, the symbolism is powerful. 1. The seed of the serpent represents those who follow deception, corruption, and rebellion against divine order. 2. The seed of the woman represents those who seek truth, wisdom, and the path of divine enlightenment. This dualistic struggle plays out throughout the Old Testament and New Testament, pointing to a final confrontation in the book of Revelation. How this theme echoes through the Bible: Moses, Jesus, Revelation. History doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. Mark Twain. The battle between the serpent and the seed of the woman isn't just a one-time event. It is a repeating pattern woven into the Bible's narrative. 1. Moses and the serpent on the pole. 1. In Numbers 21, the Israelites were plagued by venomous serpents. 2. God instructed Moses to create a bronze serpent on a pole, and whoever looked at it would be healed. 3. Strangely, the very thing that was killing them, the serpent, became the thing that saved them. 4. This is a powerful foreshadowing of Jesus, who would later be lifted up on the cross to bring salvation. John 3 verses 14 to 15. 2. Jesus, the ultimate seed of the woman. 1. Throughout the Gospels, Jesus is presented as the fulfillment of Genesis 3 verse 15. 2. His mission was to defeat the forces of darkness, reclaim what was lost in Eden, and establish a new kingdom. 3. His death and resurrection are seen as the final crushing of the serpent's head, fulfilling the prophecy. 3. Revelation, the final showdown. 1. In Revelation 12, a dramatic vision unfolds. 1. A woman clothed with the sun gives birth to a child. 2. A great red dragon, Serpent/Satan, seeks to devour the child. 3. The child is protected, and the serpent is ultimately cast down and defeated. 2. This is often seen as a final fulfillment of Genesis 3 verse 15, where the Messiah triumphs completely over the forces of evil. These connections show that the war between the serpent and the woman's seed is an ongoing battle, one that has played out in history and continues to this day. The role of the serpent in end times prophecy. It is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it. Aristotle. The serpent doesn't disappear after Eden. It re-emerges in the book of Revelation, where its ultimate fate is revealed. 1. In Revelation 20 verse 2, the ancient serpent, Satan, is bound for 1,000 years before being destroyed forever. 2. The final battle between good and evil culminates in the total defeat of the forces of darkness. 3. The vision of the new heaven and new earth is a reversal of Eden, where, instead of being cast out, humanity is welcomed back into perfect unity with God. But here's the twist. What if the serpent was never the true enemy, but a necessary part of the plan? 1. The serpent brought knowledge, and without knowledge, humanity could never ascend. 2. The struggle between the seeds shaped the course of human history, pushing people toward greater awareness. 3. Even in Revelation, evil exists to be overcome, leading to the final, ultimate transformation of reality. Could it be that the war between the serpent and the woman was always meant to lead to redemption? Final thoughts. The prophecy that changed everything. Every act of creation is first an act of destruction. Pablo Picasso. Genesis 3 verse 15 is not just a curse, it is a prophecy of transformation. The serpent and the Messiah are linked in ways we have barely begun to understand. As we continue this journey, we must ask: 1. Was the serpent a villain or an agent of necessary change? 2. Was the battle always about destruction or about refining and evolving humanity? 3. And what does this ancient prophecy mean for us today? Perhaps the war between the seeds is not just a cosmic battle, but a battle within each of us. 1. Coming up next, the Tree of Life, the ultimate secret to immortality. Chapter 8, the serpent in other religious and occult traditions. Symbols are the language of the soul. Carl Jung. Since the beginning of time, the serpent has been one of the most powerful and mysterious symbols in human history. In the West, the serpent is often seen as a deceiver, a force of evil, and a representation of Satan. But in many ancient spiritual and esoteric traditions, the serpent is something entirely different, a bringer of wisdom, transformation, and even divinity. Could it be that the biblical serpent of Genesis was never meant to be seen as purely evil, but instead as a guardian of hidden knowledge, a catalyst for human evolution, and a symbol of enlightenment? From the coiling energy of Kundalini in Hinduism to the Ouroboros as the eternal cycle of existence, to the secrets of Freemasonry and the occult, the serpent has carried deep, transformative meanings across cultures and time. This chapter will explore the hidden meanings of the serpent in world religions, mystical teachings, and secret societies, and what they reveal about the true nature of the Nachash, the serpent, in Genesis. The Kundalini serpent in Hinduism, a parallel to biblical wisdom? The kingdom of heaven is within you. Jesus, Luke 17 verse 21. In Hindu and yogic traditions, the serpent is not a deceiver but a symbol of divine energy, latent within every human being. What is Kundalini? 1. Kundalini is described as a coiled serpent resting at the base of the spine. 2. When activated, this serpent energy rises through the chakras, unlocking higher states of consciousness. 3. At its peak, Kundalini reaches the crown chakra, leading to enlightenment, divine wisdom, and union with the divine, Brahman. The striking parallel to the biblical serpent. 1. In Genesis, the serpent opened the eyes of Adam and Eve, giving them knowledge they did not previously have. 2. The Hebrew word Nachash, serpent, is related to enchantment, divination, and deep insight. 3. Could it be that the serpent in Genesis was offering an ancient form of enlightenment, one that organized religion later demonized? This idea has deep connections to Gnostic Christianity, which taught that Jesus himself came to awaken humanity from ignorance, just as the serpent awakened Adam and Eve from their state of blind obedience. The Ouroboros, the serpent as the symbol of eternity. As above, so below, as within, so without. Hermetic maxim. One of the oldest serpent symbols in the world is the Ouroboros, the serpent eating its own tail. What does the Ouroboros represent? 1. Eternal cycles of life, death, and rebirth. 2. The unity of opposites, good and evil, light and darkness, creation and destruction. 3. Alchemy and transformation, turning the base, ignorance, into gold, wisdom. The Ouroboros appears in ancient Egypt, Greek mystery traditions, Norse mythology, and even alchemical texts. A connection to Genesis. 1. The tree of knowledge gave Adam and Eve the power to become like gods. Genesis 3 verse 22. 2. The Ouroboros represents the infinite cycle of spiritual transformation, which is exactly what the serpent offered in Eden. 3. If humanity had not been cast out of Eden, could they have reached divine enlightenment, just as Kundalini Yoga teaches? Could it be that the biblical story of the fall is actually the story of humanity's first step toward spiritual awakening? The serpent in Freemasonry and esoteric teachings. Masonry, like all the religions, all the mysteries, Hermeticism, and alchemy, conceals its secrets from all except the adepts and sages. Albert Pike, Morals and Dogma. Freemasonry, the mysterious and influential secret society, has long used the serpent as a symbol of wisdom, power, and divine knowledge. Why do secret societies revere the serpent? 1. In Masonic and Hermetic teachings, Lucifer, the light-bearer, is not Satan, but the bringer of divine knowledge. 2. Many esoteric traditions believe that the fall was not a punishment, but an initiation into higher wisdom. 3. The serpent is seen as a teacher of secret knowledge, not a deceiver. The serpent as a symbol of the great work. 1. In alchemy, the serpent represents the transformation of the soul, moving from ignorance to enlightenment. 2. The caduceus, the staff with two intertwined serpents, is a symbol of healing, balance, and divine wisdom, used today as the symbol of medicine. 3. Ancient mystery schools often taught that humanity was kept in ignorance by rulers and religious institutions, and that the serpent was the key to awakening true power. Is the biblical serpent part of this ancient tradition? If Freemasonry and other esoteric traditions see the serpent as a force of wisdom, could the serpent in Genesis have been an initiator into divine knowledge, rather than an enemy? This idea aligns with the Gnostic view, which saw the serpent as a liberator, trying to free humanity from the control of a jealous god, the demiurge. Could the biblical serpent represent an ancient secret knowledge? A little knowledge that acts is worth infinitely more than much knowledge that is idle. Khalil Gibran. The serpent is one of the most misunderstood symbols in history. In the biblical narrative, it has been portrayed as the enemy of humanity. But in many other traditions, it represents the path to enlightenment, spiritual awakening, and eternal wisdom. So which is the truth? 3 possibilities to consider. 1. The serpent was a deceiver, and the traditional Christian interpretation is correct. 2. The serpent was a liberator, offering humanity the gift of knowledge that was intentionally kept from them. 3. The serpent was neither good nor evil, but a force of transformation, guiding humanity from blind obedience to divine wisdom. Each of these interpretations radically changes how we view the Genesis story and humanity's spiritual journey. Could it be that the serpent holds the ultimate secret of human potential? And if so, who benefits from keeping this knowledge hidden? Final thoughts. Is the serpent the greatest secret of all? The truth will set you free, but first it will make you uncomfortable. Gloria Steinem. From Kundalini to the Ouroboros, from Masonic teachings to ancient mythology, the serpent has always been linked to enlightenment, knowledge, and transformation. Yet, in mainstream religious doctrine, it has been demonized, feared, and suppressed. What if the real danger was not the serpent, but the loss of the knowledge it tried to reveal? As we continue this journey, we must ask: 1. Was the serpent the ultimate villain or the ultimate teacher? 2. Why does this same symbol appear in nearly every mystical tradition across history? 3. And what else has been hidden from us? 4. The answer may shake the very foundation of everything we've been taught. Chapter 9. The Forbidden Knowledge. Is it still hidden today? The greatest enemy of knowledge is not ignorance, it is the illusion of knowledge. Stephen Hawking. For thousands of years, humanity has been told a particular story about the serpent in the Garden of Eden, one of temptation, disobedience, and divine punishment. But what if this story has another layer, one deliberately hidden from view? What if the serpent was not the deceiver we've been led to believe, but rather the guardian of forbidden knowledge, knowledge so powerful that it had to be suppressed? This chapter explores how ancient wisdom, esoteric teachings, and spiritual truths have been concealed throughout history. It also examines the possibility that we are still engaged in a battle over this knowledge today, a battle between those who seek to control truth and those who seek to uncover it. The serpent as a symbol of the hidden power of the mind. The mind is everything. What you think, you become. Buddha. The serpent in Genesis is often portrayed as an external force, something outside of Adam and Eve that led them to rebel. But many ancient traditions suggest that the serpent actually represents something within us, the power of consciousness, critical thinking, and self-awareness. 1. The serpent offered Adam and Eve knowledge, not merely of good and evil, but of their own divine potential. 2. Many esoteric traditions teach that true power lies within the human mind, waiting to be unlocked. 3. The biblical Nachash, serpent, is related to divination, wisdom, and enlightenment, much like the Kundalini serpent of Hinduism, which awakens higher consciousness. If the mind is the ultimate key to power, then it's no surprise that throughout history, certain forces have sought to suppress knowledge that could awaken it. The suppression of esoteric wisdom by religious authorities. To learn who rules over you, simply find out who you are not allowed to criticize. Voltaire. Throughout history, knowledge has often been controlled by priests, kings, and religious institutions. This control was not just about theology, it was about power. 1. The burning of the Library of Alexandria erased countless volumes of ancient wisdom. 2. The Roman Church declared Gnostic and mystical texts heretical, cutting people off from alternative spiritual teachings. 3. The Inquisition silenced those who dared to question religious dogma, ensuring that only one version of truth prevailed. Why? Because knowledge is liberation, and those who control knowledge control the people. What if the serpent in Eden was not a villain, but a symbol of those who seek to break free from controlled narratives? The role of Gnostic texts and lost scriptures. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and the door will be opened to you. Matthew 7 verse 7. The Gnostic Gospels, discovered in Nag Hammadi, Egypt in 1945, offer an entirely different view of the Genesis story. These texts suggest that 1. The serpent was not Satan, but a liberator trying to free humanity from an oppressive, false god. 2. The demiurge, an imperfect, jealous creator god, sought to keep humanity enslaved in ignorance. 3. The real message of Jesus was about awakening divine consciousness, a message later distorted by religious authorities. In the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus teaches, If you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you. Could this mean that we already possess the forbidden knowledge, and that it has been buried deep within us? The suppression of the Gnostic texts, mystical teachings, and alternative spiritual traditions all point to one thing. There is knowledge that certain powers do not want us to have. Are we still in a battle over this knowledge today? Those who do not learn history are doomed to repeat it. George Santayana. If forbidden knowledge was hidden in the past, does that battle continue today? Consider 1. Why are alternative spiritual traditions ridiculed or dismissed? 2. Why are certain ancient symbols, like the serpent, demonized? 3. Why is critical thinking discouraged in many religious institutions? 4. Why do certain elites control education, media, and scientific narratives? Could it be that the same forces that suppressed the Library of Alexandria, the Gnostic texts, and esoteric wisdom are still at work today, just in a different form? We live in an age of information overload, but that does not mean we are free. In fact, one could argue that we are more controlled than ever, because we are bombarded with distractions that keep us from true knowledge. What if the real forbidden knowledge is the realization that we have the power to shape our reality? Final thoughts. The ultimate secret of the serpent. Know thyself, and you will know the universe and the gods. Ancient Greek inscription at Delphi. The serpent in Genesis offered knowledge, but it was rejected, demonized, and suppressed. The question remains, was this knowledge truly dangerous, or was it the key to human freedom? The battle over what we are allowed to know and believe has never ended. Whether through religion, politics, media, or education, there are always forces that seek to control truth and keep people from realizing their full potential. But the serpent's message still whispers through history. And for those who dare to listen, the secret is still waiting to be unlocked. The only question is, are you ready to see the truth? The greatest enemy of knowledge is not ignorance, it is the illusion of knowledge. Stephen Hawking. For thousands of years, humanity has been told a particular story about the serpent in the Garden of Eden, one of temptation, disobedience, and divine punishment. But what if this story has another layer, one deliberately hidden from view? What if the serpent was not the deceiver we've been led to believe, but rather the guardian of forbidden knowledge, knowledge so powerful that it had to be suppressed? This chapter explores how ancient wisdom, esoteric teachings, and spiritual truths have been concealed throughout history. It also examines the possibility that we are still engaged in a battle over this knowledge today, a battle between those who seek to control truth and those who seek to uncover it. The serpent as a symbol of the hidden power of the mind. The mind is everything. What you think, you become. Buddha. The serpent in Genesis is often portrayed as an external force, something outside of Adam and Eve that led them to rebel. But many ancient traditions suggest that the serpent actually represents something within us, the power of consciousness, critical thinking, and self-awareness. 1. The serpent offered Adam and Eve knowledge, not merely of good and evil, but of their own divine potential. 2. Many esoteric traditions teach that true power lies within the human mind, waiting to be unlocked. 3. The biblical Nachash, serpent, is related to divination, wisdom, and enlightenment, much like the Kundalini serpent of Hinduism, which awakens higher consciousness. If the mind is the ultimate key to power, then it's no surprise that throughout history, certain forces have sought to suppress knowledge that could awaken it. The suppression of esoteric wisdom by religious authorities. To learn who rules over you, simply find out who you are not allowed to criticize. Voltaire. Throughout history, knowledge has often been controlled by priests, kings, and religious institutions. This control was not just about theology, it was about power. 1. The burning of the Library of Alexandria erased countless volumes of ancient wisdom. 2. The Roman Church declared Gnostic and mystical texts heretical, cutting people off from alternative spiritual teachings. 3. The Inquisition silenced those who dared to question religious dogma, ensuring that only one version of truth prevailed. Why? Because knowledge is liberation, and those who control knowledge control the people. What if the serpent in Eden was not a villain, but a symbol of those who seek to break free from controlled narratives? The role of Gnostic texts and lost scriptures. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and the door will be opened to you. Matthew 7 verse 7. The Gnostic Gospels, discovered in Nag Hammadi, Egypt in 1945, offer an entirely different view of the Genesis story. These texts suggest that 1. The serpent was not Satan, but a liberator trying to free humanity from an oppressive, false god. 2. The demiurge, an imperfect, jealous creator god, sought to keep humanity enslaved in ignorance. 3. The real message of Jesus was about awakening divine consciousness, a message later distorted by religious authorities. In the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus teaches, "If you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you." Could this mean that we already possess the forbidden knowledge, and that it has been buried deep within us? The suppression of the Gnostic texts, mystical teachings, and alternative spiritual traditions all point to one thing. There is knowledge that certain powers do not want us to have. Are we still in a battle over this knowledge today? Those who do not learn history are doomed to repeat it. George Santayana. If forbidden knowledge was hidden in the past, does that battle continue today? Consider 1. Why are alternative spiritual traditions ridiculed or dismissed? 2. Why are certain ancient symbols, like the serpent, demonized? 3. Why is critical thinking discouraged in many religious institutions? 4. Why do certain elites control education, media, and scientific narratives? Could it be that the same forces that suppressed the Library of Alexandria, the Gnostic texts, and esoteric wisdom are still at work today, just in a different form? We live in an age of information overload, but that does not mean we are free. In fact, one could argue that we are more controlled than ever, because we are bombarded with distractions that keep us from true knowledge. What if the real forbidden knowledge is the realization that we have the power to shape our reality? Final thoughts. The ultimate secret of the serpent. Know thyself, and you will know the universe and the gods. Ancient Greek inscription at Delphi. The serpent in Genesis offered knowledge, but it was rejected, demonized, and suppressed. The question remains, was this knowledge truly dangerous, or was it the key to human freedom? The battle over what we are allowed to know and believe has never ended. Whether through religion, politics, media, or education, there are always forces that seek to control truth and keep people from realizing their full potential. But the serpent's message still whispers through history. And for those who dare to listen, the secret is still waiting to be unlocked. 1. The only question is, are you ready to see the truth? Chapter 10. What this means for you. The truth will set you free, but first it will make you uncomfortable. Gloria Steinem. The story of the serpent in Genesis has been told for centuries as a cautionary tale about disobedience and divine punishment. But after uncovering the hidden meanings, lost interpretations, and esoteric connections behind this ancient symbol, we are left with a crucial question. What do we do with this knowledge? Understanding the serpent's true role in the Garden of Eden is not just an academic exercise. It has profound implications for how we see ourselves, our beliefs, and the world around us. This final chapter explores how embracing this forbidden wisdom can reshape our perception of life, spirituality, and personal empowerment. How understanding the true serpent story changes everything. The real voyage of discovery consists not in seeking new landscapes, but in having new eyes. Marcel Proust. If the serpent was not a deceiver but an enlightener, then the entire foundation of the traditional Genesis story shifts. 1. Humanity was not meant to remain in ignorance. The serpent's role was not to corrupt but to awaken. 2. The expulsion from Eden was not a punishment, but a transformation. Adam and Eve became more than just innocent beings. They became self-aware. 3. Yahweh's warning wasn't about physical death, but about a shift in consciousness. The serpent said, "You will not surely die," and indeed they didn't, at least, not in the way most have assumed. This radically changes our understanding of sin, free will, and the purpose of human existence. It challenges us to see the biblical story not as a fall from grace, but as a necessary step toward enlightenment. The power of knowledge, embracing the forbidden wisdom. There is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you. Maya Angelou. If knowledge has been suppressed for millennia, then the act of seeking truth is itself an act of liberation. 1. The serpent represents knowledge, and knowledge is power. When we understand reality beyond the narratives we've been given, we regain control of our own lives. 2. Religious and societal systems have long thrived on keeping people in ignorance. To break free, we must question, explore, and challenge what we've been taught. 3. The greatest fear of those in control is a fully awakened humanity. If the masses understood their true potential, they could no longer be manipulated. This isn't just about biblical interpretation, it's about how we live our lives. The serpent's lesson is clear. To truly live, we must dare to seek knowledge, even when it is forbidden. The call to rethink traditional interpretations. If you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Wayne Dyer. Religious traditions have long framed the Genesis story as one of sin and shame. But what if the deeper lesson is about curiosity, courage, and growth? Consider 1. Why are we told that seeking knowledge leads to downfall, when throughout history, the greatest minds, Einstein, Galileo, Tesla, were all seekers of forbidden wisdom? 2. Why does religion often emphasize obedience over understanding, discouraging people from questioning their beliefs? 3. Why is the serpent universally linked to wisdom, transformation, and enlightenment in so many cultures, yet in mainstream Christianity, it is only a villain? It's time to reclaim the deeper meaning of the serpent, not as a deceiver, but as a guide. This isn't about rejecting faith, it's about expanding it. True spirituality is not about blind obedience, it's about the bold pursuit of truth. Where do we go from here? Do not go where the path may lead. Go instead where there is no path and leave a trail. Ralph Waldo Emerson. Now that you have glimpsed the hidden side of Genesis, the question remains, what will you do with this knowledge? Will you challenge what you've been told and start exploring deeper spiritual truths? Seek wisdom beyond traditional narratives, diving into ancient texts and esoteric teachings? Recognize that true enlightenment comes not from obedience, but from the courage to think for yourself. This book has only scratched the surface of what is hidden beneath thousands of years of religious doctrine. The choice is yours. Will you continue to see the serpent as the enemy? Or will you recognize it as a symbol of the knowledge, power, and awakening that has always been within you? The day you stop seeking truth is the day you start dying. Unknown. The serpent's secret is no longer hidden. 1. Now, it is in your hands. Conclusion. The Genesis serpent, villain or misunderstood guardian. As we reach the final pages of this journey, one question lingers. Was the serpent in Genesis truly the villain we've been led to believe, or could it have been a misunderstood guardian of divine wisdom? If history has taught us anything, it's that the victors write the narrative, and oftentimes, the most feared figures were simply those who dared to challenge the status quo. Joseph Campbell once said, "The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek." What if the forbidden knowledge offered by the serpent was never meant to be a curse, but a call to human awakening? Was it truly deception, or was it the first invitation to break free from blind obedience and embrace the divine gift of free will? How this book challenges mainstream theology. This book has sought to peel back the layers of traditional interpretation, revealing a perspective that few dare to explore. By questioning long-held assumptions, we open the door to a deeper understanding of spiritual narratives that have shaped the world for millennia. As Voltaire famously said, "Doubt is an uncomfortable condition, but certainty is a ridiculous one." It is through doubt, inquiry, and the courage to challenge doctrine that true enlightenment emerges. Mainstream theology often presents a black and white version of divine history: good versus evil, obedience versus rebellion. But reality is rarely that simple. Just as the serpent in Eden offered an alternative path, this book has offered an alternative lens, one that dares to ask, what if the serpent wasn't the deceiver, but the liberator? The invitation to continue the exploration. Soren Kierkegaard once wrote, "Life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards." If this book has sparked something within you, a question, a doubt, a newfound curiosity, then the journey is far from over. The greatest truths are not found in the pages of any single book, but in the ongoing search for understanding. So, I leave you with an invitation. Continue the exploration. Read beyond the accepted interpretations, study ancient texts with fresh eyes, and most importantly, trust your intuition. As Rumi beautifully reminds us, don't be satisfied with stories, how things have gone with others. Unfold your own myth. 1. The serpent's whispers still echo through time. Will you listen?